It is 5 p.m. on February 10th. We are here for our City Council study session. How this will go for folks who may not know, we will have a few presentations. You have the information in your packets. We will hear from the folks who are making the presentations. We'll have time for questions, comments. Just raise your hand, give me a little hand wave. I'll keep an eye on the hands that are being raised, and I'll keep an eye on the time. And when you're ready to jump in with questions or comments, just let me know. We are ready to get started. Our first agenda item is the Victim Compensation Fund. We have Lisa Peterson here, our city clerk, and we have Judge Goodby here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you guys for letting us come and speak about the Victim Compensation Fund. I'm going to jump into the PowerPoint so we can get through it, and then we'll open it up for questions. Okay, so as you know, the City of Golden is a home rule municipality that we can regulate our own municipal court. And as a part of municipal court, we can sentence individuals and order them to pay restitution to compensate victims for losses resulting from municipal offenses. Most of the time it's a car accident of some kind. That's the majority of what we see when it comes to restitution. However, in some cases, restitution is not reasonably collectible due to a defendant's financial circumstances. And currently we don't have a mechanism to supplement restitutions when defendants can't pay. As a result, victims remain uncompensated for their out-of-pocket expenses. So this is threefold. So the first part is the proposed ordinance, which amends Chapter 2.24 of the Golden Municipal Code. Then there's a proposed resolution, which adopts standards and guidelines for the VCF, Victim Compensation Fund, just to clarify that. And then the proposed resolution as well to amend the fee schedule, because we'll have to add in the $5 victim compensation fee as well. So when it comes to the proposed ordinance, which amends Chapter 2.24 of the GMC, establishes the Victim Compensation Fund dedicated solely to victim compensation purposes. It authorizes City Council to establish the VCF fee as assessed as court costs on defendants who are found guilty, who plead guilty or no contest. So it does not apply to someone who's found not guilty for their case. And it provides that the VCF fee not be waived or can be converted to community service unless a judge finds them to qualify for that to be waived, which will majority be our in-house type of population. This allows the initial funding through the transfer of forfeited municipal court bond amounts with discretion for future transfers by the city manager, establishes a process allowing the prosecutor to request disbursement from the VCF within 6 months of the conviction or plea, subject to the approval of the presiding judge, and then restitution will be ordered payable to the VCF when the fund has compensated a victim. So it doesn't alleviate the defendant from their obligation to pay the court back, pay the city back. It would go, their payment would go into the VCF fund. So the resolution ensures that the VCF disbursements are made only upon motion by the city prosecutor, and it vests the judge with discretion to approve or deny requests based on council adopted standards. The guidelines are promoting consistent and transparent administration of the fund, and it does not authorize expenditures beyond available fund balances, and it does not obligate the city's general fund. So financial considerations. The VCF is designed to be self-supporting. So the revenue sources would include the council established $5 VCF fee assessed as court costs. Our court costs are currently $40 for each person that comes into court, or if they pay in advance, they're still assessed at $40. So this would change our court cost to being $45 in total. And then the forfeited municipal court bond amounts transferred into that fund in the amount of $15,000. We have $16,000 and some change in there right now, so it would basically almost bring that down to just shy of $2,000 left in that fund, the forfeited bond account fund. And to go back to the VCF fee, based on numbers over the past 2 years, the average is we have about $14,000 a year that will be put into the VCF fund based on the $5 VCF fee being assessed with our numbers that we currently have. So disbursement limits. So City Council may wish to consider whether to establish a maximum dollar amount for Victim Compensation Fund disbursements on a per case basis. The purpose of a disbursement cap would ensure equitable distribution of limited funds among multiple victims and cases, provide long-term sustainability of the fund, provide clear expectations to victims, prosecutors, and the court, and reduce the risk that a small number of cases could disproportionately deplete the available resources. On the other hand, conversely, council may also consider whether strict limits could reduce the court's ability to address unique or particularly impactful cases, and whether judicial discretion alone is sufficient to ensure appropriate use of the fund. Fort Lupton is one of the other cities in Colorado that currently has a VCF fund. Judge and Andy both work in Fort Lupton, and so they're very familiar with how that program works. So Golden would join Fort Lupton as one of the only cities in Colorado currently with a VCF. Other Colorado communities do assess victim surcharges, though we wouldn't be one of the only ones who assess victim surcharges. Just goes to different things. Lakewood does what's called VAIL, Victim Assistance and Law Enforcement. Those funds primarily go to programs as opposed to directly victim assistance. And so we prefer the VCF approach because it allows us to directly impact on the victims on their out-of-pocket costs. Based on anticipated case types, available funding, and the importance of maintaining the long-term viability of the fund, the presiding judge recommends a maximum disbursement of $2,000 per case. Anything you want to add to that? Okay.
I'm sure if they have questions.
Okay. So a couple case examples that we had over the last 2 years. Case number one, the defendant is an elderly individual who has been in active case management with the Navigator. At the time of his case, he was being evicted from his place of residence. He had an accident. The judge ordered $2,850 in restitution. The defendant is not able to pay. He's unhoused at the time. He has no income. And so that amount has just been sitting there. The victims are also of limited income and elderly, and so this has really been impactful to them. One of their cars was totaled and he had to get a new car, and he was out of pocket for that cost. And we've not been able to help those victims become whole again with their out-of-pocket costs. Case two, a defendant hit a victim in an accident. The victim did not have health insurance at the time of the accident, and so her medical bill was extremely large, $15,554.95 in restitution that the judge ordered, and the defendant refuses to pay that restitution. In both of these situations, while the cases would be sent to collections, the judge could order them to be sent to collections, the restitution process would not result in a meaningful compensation to the victims. So, policy considerations for council discussion. City council may wish to consider and provide feedback on the following policy issues: the overall purpose and scope of the Victim Compensation Fund, appropriate limits, and funding mechanisms and long-term sustainability of the fund. And that is the end of my PowerPoint. So, anybody? Thanks, Judge. And I would love to open the floor for questions. We still have got about 12 minutes or so. So, any questions that I can help answer?
Lisa, can you flip back to slide
Yes.
12? Those are our talking points. Looks like we're looking slide.
Oops, sorry.
That's okay.
There you go.
Question.
Yes, Don.
$45 court fee, how does that compare to other municipalities in the area? Is it higher, lower? Do you know? It seems relatively high.
So it's hard to compare apples to oranges. A lot of courts do surcharges based on the fine amount. And so if someone's fine is $160, they could have a 5% surcharge, and depending on, or if it's lower, the surcharge can be bigger. Like Lakewood does a surcharge, Broomfield does a surcharge. So it's hard to say that it's greater or smaller because those amounts can vary. We don't do a surcharge, we just have a flat court cost. So a lot of them have a court cost and a surcharge on top of that.
Okay.
Do you know any more information?
I would say, I do this at a number of different courts, and I would say we're pretty much in the middle. So Idaho Springs is 35, and if you go, I do relief work at Thornton and Westminster, and they're higher. So I'd say we're not too high, we're not too low, we're kind of Goldilocks, say.
Patty, did you have a question?
I did. Yeah. Do you have like ballpark how much or how frequent these cases would occur, and how much would the demand be per year?
Yeah. So for context, and I did answer a question for Councilor Krasinski yesterday. For context, we averaged about maybe 2 a year since 2015 that are still outstanding and pending restitution. Last year, 2024 was our highest year of unpaid restitution. We had 7 cases of unpaid restitution totaling over $27,000. That is not normal. But given that number, I've calculated it, and 7 requests at $2,000 each, if that's the cap that we're gonna go at, that puts us at $14,000, which is exactly what we would average in our VCF fund accumulation over a year.
This is my contribution. Obviously, Lisa's prepared so much of this, and thank you. This is what I would suggest, is that you really, the question is whether this is something that you want. Because it's not my court or Lisa's court, it's your court, and we come in and we perform a service for you. But it's really, the court needs to resemble what you want on behalf of your voters. Right now, you have a municipal court that steers clearly within, the lines. Okay, we don't have bells and whistles like they have at the state court. If you went to the state court, you would see they have, a variety of services like pretrial supervision or juvenile diversion or probation officers, you name it. They pay a lot of fees for those kinds of things. You have a court that receives the appropriate kinds of tickets from your law enforcement agency. We're handling the kind of cases that should come to us. I can't say that about all the courts that I practice in. Some of them have pretty serious matters come here. But we are efficient and we are lean. The question I think that you want to answer, in your role is, do we want to expand the lines a little bit? Because this is not a traditional within the lines kind of municipal court operation. You can see there's not too many municipal courts that do this. I think you should, but it's not my court, it's your court. I think that the good that comes for these limited number of cases is worth it. And I think, I was a prosecutor a long time ago. In '92, the state adopted crime victims compensation funds, and I was prosecutor at the time. There is something intuitively kind of appealing about a class of offenders contributing to address wrongs that a victim class may have. And I think that's kind of philosophically appealing, even if it's as little as $5. And when I say offender, I mean me, traffic ticket guy, anybody, everybody pitches in a little bit, and there's a unique class here that may need a little bit of help. I like that, but it's not my court, it's your court. So I think the big question is, do you want it? I have a high level of confidence that the mechanics about how to run it, that Lisa she will excel, she'll answer those questions, that's what she's good at. I'm no good at those things. She's nice to have somebody whose skills offset your skills, but the mechanics of how to run it, how to administer it, I think those questions will be answered pretty quickly. But
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you
You
for
bet.
that, and I'm just going to address the considerations. I do support having the fund. Through no fault of their own, they've been injured or out financially, and it sounds like the city's process to order restitution but then go to collections isn't always successful right away. So an opportunity to provide something to the victims while that process seemingly may take longer. I think that's great. I do think a limit is appropriate, so that 15,000 isn't going to one victim and then there's nothing for everyone else. So I'm supportive of the 2,000. I think the part that I want to just from a policy perspective, implementing something new, I'd really like it to come forward for a review. So just to take it and in a reasonable period of time come back. It's not a lot of money, and those small amounts don't typically come to council, but I do think it's appropriate to have a review of the program to see if it's working as intended, what those financial amounts are accumulating, too much, too little, if adjustments are needed in the policy. I hate to approve something and then we don't look at it again, you
You
know.
could even sundown it
Yeah.
and then decide whether or not it's something that
Yeah,
you.
or just a periodic, you know, or just a review, even, it doesn't have to be forever and ever, but an initial, because something new like this, the limit might not be appropriate, the estimates may not be appropriate, and frankly, the impacts to the victims, I think, you know, would be, important considerations. So that would just be my request of, you know, having a kind of a review.
Emily?
Yeah, so I would agree. I think this program could do a lot of good, especially because we are talking about people who have made some sort of wrong, and then these victims are out there and they have to deal with their wrongs and different types of financial classes. And kind of tacking on to what Laura has, our mayor has said, I would like to see how the process works. I did email you about like, hey, how would this work? Is it a queue? So I'm a victim, I'm making claim, and then I'm getting this money, but I would like to see how, if we do have a queue ever. Is this stacking up, and then is this queue over time getting bigger, where people are waiting still months to then get these fees back? So yeah, overall, I think it's a good idea. I'd just like to see the support process in the back end.
And that could be part of the review.
Yeah. Yep.
Talking about that part.
Yeah.
Patty, and then I have a quick question.
So I'm a little concerned about, you know, the two examples you gave. One, someone was lacking the ability to pay, and the other one, the guy just absolutely refused. And I could see a situation where people just choose not to because they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to. The victim's going to be made whole, and so I don't have to. Have you, in any of your research, seen something like that? And how would we avoid that kind of a situation? Or would we prioritize victims who the offender could not pay over ones who just refused to?
Well, collecting restitution in municipal court for higher cases, higher dollar cases it's just a real challenge. For the second victim, I created an order that is a civil judgment that she could go and file in the district court, and then she could pursue collection actions against this person, but she'd have to hire a lawyer. But she would have a court order saying that this amount is owed by this person to this other person. You're talking about a problem that many municipal courts have to struggle with, because we really don't have, you know, in the state court, if somebody owes tens of thousands of dollars, you make it a condition of their probation, and if they don't pay, then you can violate their probation and you can send them to jail and stuff like that. I'm not running a debtor's court, you know. I'm not gonna incarcerate people, you know, particularly if I have concerns about whether or not they have the ability to pay. The second guy, I don't know whether he had the ability to pay or not. He was an interesting case. He thought that because he believed that the victim was not a citizen, that he didn't owe any money. And pitched that as why would I have to pay? And I said, well, she's out the money, whether she's a citizen or not. She went to the hospital, but he was a somewhat recalcitrant person, and I hope that she pursued collections on it. That would have been a nice option that was available then, but I don't know if that really answers your question. There's not a good answer at the municipal court level when you get above $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. You just don't have many good options. You certainly don't have the kind of options that you'd have in state court.
And Andy's gonna be submitting the motion for it, and so he has experience with it in Fort Lupton, so I think he's gonna have experience in knowing which cases he should submit for restitution.
Lisa, it sounds like you will be doing the administrative work for this. Do you have the bandwidth to add more administrative lift to your plate?
So I have a new court clerk, and with some of the efficiencies I have planned for the court coming up in the future, I believe this is something that she can also take onto her plate, doing the restitution piece and submitting that to AD.
Oh,
Thank you
okay.
for asking.
Yeah, sure. I do support it. I do think it's an excellent program, and the $2,000, I think your recommendation is very reasonable. Go ahead, Don.
Two quick things. One is I'd like to see when it comes back to us that there's some inflation adjustment so that if it does continue, that we don't have to keep seeing it when that money becomes less valuable. The other idea would be a discussion with finance about whether we could cash flow this, because it's awkward if somebody's waiting for restitution and we have to wait for somebody else to submit their bond. If it's only a $15,000 pool, I feel like the city could cash flow it and make it whole at the end of the year or figure it out. But if it affects the quality of the program because we're waiting on funds, I guess I'd like to think about how to work through that in advance instead of fighting over, what's not much money.
Yes, Sandra?
I want to echo a lot of what was said here. Definitely, I support this. I've got the same concerns because it is new, and I agree. I think intuitively it feels right, but because it is new and we would be one of a few, the review would be helpful with some of the measures that folks spoke about. And I came here with a little bit of questions around not necessarily the financial sustainability. It seems like you guys have a really good handle on those numbers, but to more your point, the administrative sustainability. Like, we're confident in our ability to adopt this without a bunch of administrative overhead. And then you said something interesting around we have the correct kinds of cases coming to our court
Yeah.
today that fit this model. Anything that we should think about to continue that practice, to not grow that administrative overhead?
I should probably add that, at the state level, they've been doing a CVC, Crime Victims Comp, since '92. They have a board. So every judicial district has a board that's appointed by the district attorney. I was an elected DA that appointed a board back in Eagle, back in the '90s. And then when I was the number 2 person in Adams, I was the lawyer that gave legal counsel to the board. So I have a unique kind of experience with regard to these kinds of decisions. We're not proposing a board, we're proposing that I make the decision. But if you would be more comfortable with a board, you could consider that. I don't think you should have a board. I like the idea that Andy files a motion and then if I want more information, then I say I want more information. It's just a little bit more streamlined, but we are doing it a little bit differently than the way that the state does it.
Thank you. I hear a lot of support here. Gerhard, do you have anything to add?
Well, I don't feel like I need to waste a lot of time repeating what others have said, so I'm happy.
Sounds good. You're happy? Okay. Does anyone have any last minute thoughts? Do you both have the answers in the direction that you need?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Good to see you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is the East Zone Amenity Plan, and I think we're going to have Steve.
Evening, Council.
Evening.
I think Ms. Clerk will get the presentation up pretty soon. So, how nice to see you all. And it's certainly been an exciting couple of years for Heart of Golden since the adoption of the planning document in August of 2022. 2 years ago, perhaps to the week or day, council gave direction as to what concept to move forward with for the municipal building. And that led to intensive design and most recently completion of design, groundbreaking in July. And if you've been looking at the live stream, we have stair towers and elevator cores, and we'll soon have lower level slabs. So generally, as with all staff, I don't know if this is working. Oh, right. One of the big themes in the Heart of Golden planning document was focus on the east end and, if feasible, to relocate municipal uses in that direction. And so, in addition to the municipal building, which is going very excitedly, in 2025, council gave direction to proceed with planning for the east zone. And under full disclosure, in the original Heart of Golden document, the east zone was from Ford Street East. but a year or so ago, we started talking about the exciting opportunity to link Parfit Park to the areas east of Ford Street, and took the liberty of this version of the East Zone starts at Washington and goes east. So it includes Parfit Park, Vanover Park, Tucker Gulch, which most folks never knew much about in this area. It's not along the trail that you go further north. And of course, the properties along Archer Street and the area east of Archer Street, directly south of the, under construction municipal building. So in March of this year, you authorized a contract with planning and design firm HDR and Superbloom to work on it. And we got started. Nice picture. You don't see this view very often. It's with the Archer Street properties in the foreground, and then Vanover Park, and then the Water Street properties, and then Parfit Park way in the distance. But we were able to start in conjunction with some other Heart of Golden activities this spring. In fact, the first meeting in April was like 2 weeks after we were under contract, and so our consultants were there just to listen and enjoy. But throughout the summer and fall, there's been a number of engagement opportunities, guiding golden opportunities, several visits to the Parks Board, one visit to the Arts and Culture Commission, and some engaging risky things like community meeting in the park, and you never know whether it's going to rain, and the wind always knocks over the boards when you're out in the park. But it was not surprising, but I think confirming that the community engagement themes were very, very similar to what we've been hearing in recent years with Heart of Golden and frankly with Creek Corridor information and they are on page 2 of the memorandum. Those are some big takeaways in here, and I don't know to what degree they become longer lasting takeaways for community feelings about the downtown area, but I wanted to highlight them before going into some other recommendations. But nature first. There was a strong recommendation that activities that are more nature-based, and not destination-based, goes through all of the input, that not wanting to our Heart of Golden Corridor to be a Disneyland or some sort of based largely, certainly not solely, but even largely on attracting folks as a destination. But connectivity always comes up in Golden, and multimodal access and connections outward from this property and within the properties. Resident focused for everyday use. We have the somewhat love-hate relationship with events in the community and how they are so cool, but the same spaces want to be designed so that you and I and our families can go and enjoy them on an everyday basis and not feel that we're out of place, that we feel very comfortable there for the 95% of the year or whatever days that it is solely a comfortable place for folks to be. And just when it says resident focused, that doesn't mean visitors aren't welcome, but it's looking towards individual experiences and smaller activities and more intimate, right-sized events, and then local character over iconic. So I'm attempting to be quickly here, and circling back, our goal tonight is to see if you're okay to schedule some sort of formal action on this. And I don't use the word adoption necessarily, because this is not something that we would build. This is an aspirational statement of what the areas could be. And if you are supportive of it, as the community was and as the Parks Board is, it would lead to further preliminary design of the entire area and perhaps final design of the area east of Archer Street, so that we could try to finalize that area the summer of '27 as we're moving into the building. But as I say, it's aspirational in nature, and I couldn't even imagine that we would get to where we got for what I find to be the most exciting area is Vanover Park, Tucker Gulch, and the Archer Street properties of what they can be. So wanted to take a couple minutes to run through those slides and then take some brief questions if you have them, and see, ideally, if you were supportive, I would bring this back on March 17th for you to, quick sidebar. In my old life as your planning director, in dealing with DRCOG, there's always a question of what is the word? Is it approve, accept, acknowledge, endorse? What action we might ask you to take in March, I don't know, but it essentially means, are you in support of this and can we proceed? Those are the 4 focus areas that came out of the plan. And not surprisingly, Parford Park does not include recommendations for much change at all. There is a recommendation for an east-west trail near the north end by the restroom, and to improve ADA access east and west, and to make some connections, and to one of the terms that's been used throughout the document is to rewild a little bit along the creek edge to focus on native plantings a little bit more and make sure that the plantings respect the character of the creek corridor. And that's one reason that in the memo you might have noticed that the 30% design recommended from Ford to Archer doesn't include Parford, because we would see that as a later phase, and the design for Ford to Archer is going to be complicated because of the Tucker Gulch changes and the fact that you need flood control approval for that change. Even though it's improving the floodplain dramatically, you need other approvals. But Parford Park would remain a focus of the community. Much of the event focus still will probably happen there because the community likes it there. But also, if you look at it on an everyday basis, the same types of intimate activities that you see there is what we would expect to see going forward. But then, Vanover Park, the recommendations are very little change west of the bridge that crosses Clear Creek and takes you over to Ford Street by the other bridge over Kinney Run. But from the east area, and the east area has always been the least used in my experience. There's a little pump track there and a little big rock that people climb on, but the area by the gulch has never been used as much. And when you start to look at what Tucker Gulch could be, if you remove the concrete walls, lay back the slopes, terrace down to it, make it an area that is so incredibly attractive compared to what it is now and useful, that really will vitalize the east side of Vanover Park, and then also the gulch itself. So it would be an incredible amenity. It is somewhat unfortunate that from the north end of Vanover Park to 10th Street is very, very constrained by properties in the East Street right-of-way, and is not included in this plan. There is some thought with planning and engineering as to what we can do with the Tucker Gulch Trail from the bridge up to 10th, as they're looking to realign the crossing over, not over 10th, crossing of 10th. But this is what excited us, the staff team, during the interviews when we were selecting the team, and it's gotten such a positive reaction from the committee and also from the Parks Board, including, it was the Parks Board that came up with the concept of freeing the gulch, freeing it from its concrete prison. Just another look at that. On the east side of the gulch, there's, and because this is aspirational, it will not look like this. It will look, as we design it as a community together, it will look, I hope it meets this spirit and this feeling, but it'll be whatever we design as a group when we get down to actual design. But another restroom, shade structures, terraced areas, a little pump track. There was a lot of support in the community engagement for a little bit of a pump track. And then all the way over to Archer Street. One of the mistakes I made, I won't have Scott or Carly take any blame, but I assumed the city hall was going to be a rectangular building, square or rectangular, and that the distance from the building down to the Farmers Highline Canal would be more significant than it is currently. By having the building be so sustainable and oriented in such a way, the area east of Archer Street becomes more narrow, but it has some tremendous attributes, including the very east end, that nobody sees or knows about unless you really seek it out. But so what came up out of that is more of a walking experience, seating, overlook experience. If we're really creative, perhaps a better relationship with Farmers Highline Canal than the 6-foot chain link fence, but quiet, reflective area towards the east end. Public art might want to be focused through this area as a walking tour in the east end of our Heart of Golden corridor. But this is an area that staff sees as completing this in the summer of '27 would be really ideal as we're completing the landscaping to the north up to the building. Some of the areas there include the storm drainage pond at the south end of the building that will be created by the building, but the landscape treatment of it and whether there's art in it can be enhanced by this project. And then lastly, there are some mobility recommendations to continue to look at Water Street area, 10th Street, Complete Street, which is in the city's transportation master plan, but also because it is appearing that a Ford Street underpass is not in the cards in the near term, a safety enhancement at the corner of Water Street and Ford Street that includes a median and a pedestrian activated signal to try to organize crossings in the busy months, organized crossings so we're not impeding traffic up and down. One of the benefits of more recent technology is for years we would have told you that you can't put a signal there because it will not work timing-wise with 12th Street and 10th Street. But the technology has advanced enough that our engineers and the consulting engineers assure us that it can be synchronized. And what it would do is it would take people crossing the street and put them in cohorts. I think we call them, in sociology and economics, we call them cohorts, I think. But groups, so they're not just constantly streaming across the street. That's the short version of why I'm so excited about this plan and would love to proceed with the next steps once we get funding. The DDA may choose to fund part of the next steps of the design, but we would work together to try to fund that design either this year or early next year and keep working on it. The end.
Thank you, Steve. We have a few minutes for some quick comments and questions. Yes, Laura.
I'm excited too. A couple of comments. One, specific to that intersection, I know we really tried hard not to add more crossings in that very short period because there's a crossing on the other side of the bridge, but agree for safety and mobility and connection it's needed. This is interesting, and I'd be curious whenever it gets to this point. Removal of the turns onto Water Street there is a change, and so you know, obviously it's not happening right away, but yeah, that taking away that left-hand turn and that through street, which gets used often, not always safely, so very rarely safely. But so yeah, I think that's an interesting concept in design, not just for the pedestrian aisle and the crosswalk, but to actually remove those turns and that straight through. So I'm sure there'll be lots more conversation. But around the transit mobility side of things, I appreciated the changes to Parfit Park for the bus. That's proposed. I don't think I saw anything about potential locations for transit stop east of Ford. So anywhere in that area, you know, if we were to extend Orchard, if we were to have shuttle to the parking lots there, to the police municipal building, to Archer Street, you know, what would be a great location for that? And I'm hoping that sooner rather than later, we can have that extension of the Orchard shuttle once the building opens. And we already see it now with all the parking that goes on in that parking lot, that a transit option would be beneficial. So just, yeah, I didn't see if that was any part of the thinking or locations, but it would be great to.
We kind of, for purposes of this, didn't ignore 10th Street, but we assumed that 10th Street would be handled by planning and engineering.
Don?
On the drawing with Tucker Gulch joining up with the creek, I wonder if it'll be at the same grade as Kinney Run, so there'll be backflow, because if it's only relying on the natural flows, it could end up being kind of scummy. So I would just say that we engineer that properly. Literally scum in the sense of, you know, algae and stuff. Let's see, you also said that it would be pedestrian activated. I think what you meant and what you laid out later was that the existence of pedestrians will result in cohorts being created electronically, but there will not be a beg button.
No, I think there might be a button.
You know, because that's not what I saw in the drawing. But you think there might be a beg button? Yeah.
That's my understanding, and that would be something city engineer would have to weigh
Yeah,
in
as
on
long as
before
it
we
builds
chose
up
something.
cohorts and it's not just like, oh, they just crossed and then,
Right.
yeah.
Well, then, I'm sorry to interrupt. Similar to 18th Street in Washington, you do, and Jackson Street, you do push the button. Those are flashers, those aren't a signal.
Yeah, but it's different than what's being described at the Hawk signal at 19th for the sophomore dorm, which is,
That's what this is.
Yeah.
Timed.
That's what
that's
we talked
what I'm thinking, okay.
But you would still press a button in order to time the activation.
Okay,
You don't just get to push it and it keeps happening.
yeah,
So-
okay.
It doesn't come right away, but the button
There's
is.
still that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just wait,
Yeah, I mean, I wish that we could work through the engineering challenges of the crossing below Ford. So are we just done with that, like it's not gonna happen? Or are we still pursuing engineering solutions to the wall and stuff
It's
next to it?
currently on the CIP to restart either next year or the year after, but I don't know for sure if we'll get information to warrant starting again.
Okay,
But it is, no, it's not appropriated because it's not the first year, but it shows up in the CIP.
okay. I guess I'd like to fish or cut bait on that one because we keep spending a lot of money on design, and if it's not gonna happen, we should stop spending money on design.
We have stopped spending money.
Okay.
So there's money that we will reconsider if there's some change that's happened in 2027, but we have stopped spending money.
Okay, thank you.
Patty?
Thank you, this is a lot of great work. I'm really very supportive of everything, like basically Vanover East. I think that you did a really good job of capturing what I've been hearing throughout the community and everything that is desired down there. I think the Water Street crossing and then the future of Water Street is going to be, really need to be thoughtful and have a lot of outreach. There's a lot of residents and a lot of employees that depend on the parking on Water Street. And there's an apartment building that, you know, has their private parking accessed through Water Street. So I think we need to be really careful and really conscientious about what we're gonna do there in terms of like, you know, mobility, biking, walking, parking, everything like that. And so do you have any ideas of, okay, so I'm curious about some of the big ideas you heard and like some of the things that you heard that did not make it into the plan or for various reasons. I think we've heard about an amphitheater for many years, but like what else was considered and not included?
Dog park,
Oh, okay.
but there wasn't much support for that.
Mm-hmm.
More, I don't want to say more event related, but more destination related. Iconic was the term that was used in the document, that more golden character, less iconic. But in the meeting that was in Lions Park, where the wind was blowing us things down, had alternatives that folks voted on, and the one that was less formal and what you see in the document was overwhelmingly supported by the folks there. So I think it was a character-related change, that those things that weren't necessarily in character with the takeaways didn't proceed.
One of those was at Parfit Park, having more hardening of the landscape for more event traffic, and kind of like
like seating options for more of that sort of thing. And so that didn't get as much support. This was kind of the, as Steve said, the more wild, minimal change kind of option. And so some of the bigger ideas didn't get as much support.
I also want to say, I like the shade structure ideas, especially for planting new trees, like we need some shade in the interim while they create the new tree canopy, especially around like Tucker Gulch, the new building.
Steve, I'll jump in. I do think this is great. I'm definitely supportive. As we go farther down the planning road, I would like to consider some of these green spaces to be pesticide-free if possible.
And pesticide, I'm sorry for not mentioning that. We had a great conversation, the more recent ones with the Parks Board about planting, very pointed emphasis on native plantings and pesticide-free.
Okay.
I understand that the Parks Department is investigating the DeLong Park experience and what it would take to broaden that. But yes, the Parks Board folks are very much in that camp.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anyone else have any?
Well, the only comment I haven't heard is that, you know, one of the side benefits of this is it's going to increase the value of the city properties just north of the municipal building. So as we decide what to do with those properties, this will just make those, enhance the value of those properties.
From the DDA point of view, it also reflects that downtown doesn't necessarily stop at the creek. That downtown is getting longer north and south as the years change, and putting a big emphasis into city public spaces on the north side of the creek is appropriate.
Question.
Yes.
I think it's pretty clear that the Archer House would go away, as would the storage unit adjacent.
Yes, the two parking lots, the gray garage, and the house would all be removed in this plan.
Okay, it comes to mind that there's some lights over there that people had wanted, don't want. What do you have? I guess I would want to make sure that we're thinking intentionally about whether this space is activated for nighttime use or not, closed at sunset. Think through that kind of stuff, because it might affect how you bring in power, and whether you. And while we're not going to have an event space, if we did want to activate the space, sometimes having power is another consideration to think about, so that you could do that.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at time, maybe even a little over. Does anyone have any last minute comments? Steve, Carly, do you have everything that you need from us tonight?
No, I would hope to be back in 5 weeks.
We will see you
with
on
a
March
resolution
17th.
Doing something.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Next on our agenda, we are
Thank you, Bob.
talking road code.
I'm going to add a preface before they all get started. Two things. First, we did just send out the presentation to you all, so check your email for this presentation if you want to follow along. And then the second item that I wanted to comment on, there are several maps that are provided as part of the packet, and there's a staff recommended map, there's a state map, and then there's a, I'll say, middle of the road map. I want council to understand that we have been operating under a state-imposed deadline as it relates to review and adoption of this code. There's an adoption deadline of April the 1st, and there's an implementation deadline of July the 1st. The state has been challenged in a number of regards, many from a technical aspect and a technological aspect. That challenge our ability to put some materials and information, or to have a long time to study and review and comment and make our recommendations. So we're working quickly with regards to this as a result of just the process that this legislation took, and the development of this state code that then we're mandated as a city to adopt. What I want everybody to understand is that staff has made recommendations with regards to one of those three maps. You have the ability to select any of those three or provide direction today to staff to focus on any one of those three. If you choose to go with the state map, because it's new and because we don't know all of the implications of this code to property owners or to the city in general, it's totally okay, and I want everybody to understand that there's no hard feelings or no upset from staff if you decide to take a smaller step to start with. You have the ability to come back at any time and go back and adopt a different map. So you could start with the state map now, and then 3 months or 6 months or a year from now come back and adopt a different map after you have perhaps more information and we have more understanding about how this code is influencing or affecting homeowners. So I just wanted to provide that for everybody for a little bit of additional context before they get started. So.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Good evening, everybody. I think everybody knows me. I'm Brett, Fire Marshal for the city. It's good to see everybody again.
I'm Scott Greer. For new council members, I'm the chief building official for the city.
So thank you for your time. We'll go quickly through the PowerPoint, and I know we've got a lot of questions about the code. So the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code Board was established by the state of Colorado through an act of the governor. They were charged with creating the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code, or CWRC for short, government acronyms. So we've got a number of them. We'll try to make it through. They were tasked with this. They had a timeline. July 1st of last year is when they were mandated by state law to actually adopt the code. And so it was a little bit of a rush job there at the end. Just going to be honest with you, I followed it since I started here at Golden. I've been following the formulation of the CWRC. Then DFPC, the Division of Fire Prevention and Control, along with the board, was tasked with creating rules and policies to guide the adoption and the appeals process for maps, especially locally adopted maps for governing bodies. And so that is what 8 CCR 1507-39 is, and that was included in your council packet as well. That is the guiding rules and policy. This makes it a little bit easier. This no longer lives on their website, so I had to go digging for a little while to find it, but this is the timeline for adoption at the state level all the way down to the local jurisdiction, both the adoption and then the enforcement by the governing body. And I'm going to use AHJ, authority having jurisdiction. That's us, as we have it, right? Governing body and local jurisdiction all the same, so please bear with me. I apologize for mixing those up, but they're all the same. April 1st is when we're mandated by the state as a governing body, local jurisdiction, to adopt this code, either the CWRC or something more restrictive. The state mandated code is the minimum code that can be adopted. And then July 1st of 2026, 3 short months either after the adoption, so if you adopt earlier than April 1st, still 3 months after that, you have to start enforcing it. But if we're shooting for an April 1st deadline for adoption by that date, then we're looking at a July 1st enforcement deadline. That gives us local jurisdictions, the authority, the AHJs, a little bit of time to figure out processes and procedures, build internal processes and procedures before rolling it out into the public, and most notably giving time to educate the public on what is coming to, a town near us. So the board was tasked with not only creating the code, but creating a map that would make it enforceable across different areas. Some notable comments about the map for the state level, which is on the left-hand side of this PowerPoint. Well, actually this PowerPoint here, my apologies, is our CWPP maps, which y'all are all familiar with probably by now. I know I'm very familiar and kind of nauseous from looking at them so much, so often. But the CWPP maps kind of set the baseline here for Golden. I just put this on here as a reference for y'all. The state was tasked with creating this map that used a methodology, and we'll talk more about it in depth later. I'm sure you've got a lot of questions, to come up with fire intensity classifications. A low fire intensity classification, a moderate fire intensity classification, and a high fire intensity classification. And these intensity classifications are based on Chapter 3 of the CWRC, which is fuel behaviors during a wildfire situation. And we can get as in-depth into the science of wildfire as much as you want to, probably not tonight, but you can always meet me for a cup of coffee if you want to, I guess, right, and talk wildfire science, if you ever feel like it. We're going to go ahead and jump right into it. These are the 3 maps that we have presented for you inside the counselor packet. The state wildfire map is on the far left. The middle ground that Mr. Vargo stated is the home ignition zone map. And then the last one is the staff recommended on the far right enhanced structural protection wildfire map. You can thank Chief Bill for some fancy names for maps. He always has some good names for things. So we're going to jump right into what the state wildfire map is. There's a lot of words. You don't have to read it if you don't want to. I'll try to explain as much as possible. First and foremost, I want to show you what number of parcels are actually being affected by the state. There is a mistake on here. As Mr. Vargo just said, we had some difficulties from the state getting their state data down to us in a packet that we could actually deliver into our GIS system. That's a statewide issue. And we do have one high-risk parcel, which is Apex Park, which I think Councilor Vitry pointed out via question to staff. Apex Park, which appears to have no structures on it whatsoever, is a high risk. Now, when it comes to later determination of what that means, we'll talk about it. But attempts, moderate class, moderate hazard, and class 2. So moderate hazard is class 2, like high hazard is class 2. 639 parcels are affected in the city of Golden by that designation that the state has given. Low hazard or class 1 is 166 based on the state map. The map attempts to encompass current potential WUI, which is wildland urban interface, geographic area where structures and other human development meets or intermingles with wildland or vegetative fuels. The original map was generated with a 20-meter resolution, which was deemed too detailed by the state. So we get hexagons instead, and that is what we were left with to try to parse at the parcel level to figure out where all those little hexagons intersected with our parcels to determine their actual classifications. And so that tool was decided on by the state Wildfire Resiliency Board because it smoothed, filtered, and aggregated the parcels and everything. So we went with the parcel level, and it does not consider, and what's really important here for council to note is it does not consider ember cast, which is all those embers flying through the air during an actual wildfire landing near people's homes and vegetation. That was not what they did here. This was just where wildfire vegetation or wildland vegetation abutted what they considered to be urban. The next map is the home ignition zone wildfire map. Number of parcels affected. We did not change in the 2 staff maps that were created, moderate hazard classification at all. We didn't want to overburden our community with class 2. An increase in class 2 designations, so 639 again is what we have here, but we did go through and more closely follow the home ignition zone recommendations of Colorado State Forest Service, which says that 100 feet away from your house that is in the wildland urban interface should be mitigated. And so taking that just theory or concept and putting it into play at the parcel level, if a parcel was within 100 feet of an identified parcel within the state wildfire map, we added it as a low risk. So it creates kind of a buffer. The whole idea is trying to create a buffer around the city, a hardening structure buffer along with vegetation buffer, so that it slows a potential community conflagration. So. And then our third map is the enhanced structural protection wildfire map. In this one, there is one additional moderate, and that's a right-of-way. So that just got added a right-of-way there. And then low hazard class 1 is 1,889. So you can see that it's a drastic increase, but this map considers a broader ember cast. for the fuel density, slope, and potential wind conditions that we face here in the city of Golden. Still doesn't bring much of the actual urban environment into the map, because urban shouldn't burn if we do a good enough job of hardening and the structures around the perimeter of our major city. And then it attempts to prevent a wildfire-initiated community conflagration, WIC, while balancing construction cost concerns as much as possible. And we'll talk more about those later. This is what staff is recommending, is this map right here. Again, though, just to echo Mr. Vargo, is your decision, so. So to talk about the Golden Wildfire Resiliency Code, this is what it would be named once we adopt it. It no longer becomes the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code. It becomes our Wildfire Resiliency Code as a city. So the Golden Wildfire Resiliency Code applies to new structures and major additions / modifications to existing structures in the identified wildland urban interface. This is a building code. This is not meant to be a retroactive code. And so it affects a parcel when an addition of 500 square feet or more is made to a structure within that identified mapped area. So if your parcel is outside of the map, not shaded any color whatsoever, this doesn't affect you. But it does start affecting you if you're shaded. And you go to add 500 square feet or more to your structure. Roof replacements shall comply with fire-resistant roof requirements, making it a Class A. When reconstructing, replacing, altering, or repairing more than 25% of a building's existing walls, the walls in Zone 1, which is 0 to 5 feet immediately from the structure, shall comply with the code, which is for Class 2 areas only. So exterior walls do not affect. They don't come into play until you get into Class 2, that moderate or high hazard. So that's something I wanted to note here for you. Fence replacements throughout the WUI will require permitting when near habitable structures. So your home, we will start requiring permits for those fences because they have to be non-combustible from your house to 8 feet away from your house, which prevents that fire from spreading to your home and catching your home on fire. And then the code official has the authority to address a distinct hazard to life or property. I'm not the code official. He is, but okay, he's the man, and I live in Scottsboro, and you get to guess which one. Both. And then economic impact. We're flying through it, but like I said, I'm sure you have questions. The IVHS and Headwaters Economic Study suggests that a building home that incorporates wildfire-resistant building materials increases the cost of that project by 2% to 3%. Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, IVHS, is conducting a study to determine the economic impacts of the Wildland Urban Interface Code requirements. So they are specifically looking at the CWRC, but doing it on a scale, if you will, a sliding scale of if you meet the minimum, and then if you go a little bit above that and a little bit above that, and what are the costs associated to homeowners or property owners when you do that. We expect those numbers, those fiscal numbers, to come out near April. So sometime around April, mid-April is when they're supposed to be releasing those to us. So. House Bill 25-1182 goes into effect on July 1st, 2026. That House bill, as many of you already know, deals with insurance transparency around wildland fire mitigation efforts. And so that goes effect here around the exact same time that we'll be enforcing the code. And so that will help, hopefully, our homeowners get a little bit more transparency from their individual insurance companies on what mitigation efforts will reduce their costs, if at all possible. So, and that is the end. I don't have a nice Q&A slide because I just wanted to jump straight into Q&A with y'all. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm sure we have plenty of questions. Go ahead, Gerhard.
So I guess the first thing I was curious about is the impact on homeowners' insurance costs for a house that sits in the orange area, in the yellow area. Mm-hmm. Let alone insurance companies just canceling insurance if your house happens to be in the orange or the yellow areas. So what is the impact? Do we have any history yet?
So that's a great question. We don't really have a history because most jurisdictions are still not adopting this code yet. They're in the same process that we are currently, including Jefferson County. And so we don't know, but I can tell you that insurance companies generally don't care about what the state adopts. Talking to some of the insurance companies, myself, at the Colorado Fire Commission, they don't think the state map goes far enough, and they don't think that the state code goes far enough. You know, the state code, how it was written, the CWRC allows vinyl fencing right up against the house. That's one of the exceptions made that I did end up writing out of our code because vinyl fencing does burn. So it kind of does away with the whole non-combustible effort that we're trying to make there. And this code allows, and what I have left is limited combustibility plants in that zone 1, 0 to 5 feet. That's something that IBH doesn't like. They say that you shouldn't have anything that can burn within 0 to 5 feet. Low combustibility plants will eventually burn. But talking to many of our residents here in the city from my detailed home assessments, our residents have a hard time, you know, wanting no plants near their home. And so just suggesting that there is low combustibility that they can go with, I thought was a fair option to leave in the GWRC from the CWRC. I hope that answers your questions a little bit, other than the fact that the insurance companies, they have their own modeling, proprietary modeling, that they're not sharing with anybody. Hopefully this new bill, HB 25, whatever, helps us get those maps.
Well, that's where I was wondering if the more conservative approach is to take the limited map, watch what happens over the next 6 months. We can still implement the more aggressive map or extensive map for zoning requirements or something like that. But let's, you know, kind of see what happens over the next 6 months before jumping to coloring a third of the city yellow and then seeing everyone's insurance policies double. Of course, I don't even know if that's going to happen, but it's just cautious. Because later on today, we're going to hear a lot about affordability, and I'd hate to be causing a problem because we're trying to be really good.
Sure, I totally understand that, Counselor. The reason why the enhanced structural protection map's included is because it aligns with our CWPP. So,
gotcha.
Don?
2 quick questions. One is, you just made one point, that this enhanced structural map lines up with our CWPP, but my understanding is that that's not kind of statutory enforceable, and this is, and so that makes that connection.
yes, sir. Yep.
But I actually share his concerns about insurance. Actually, just a subtle thing, a lot of our side setbacks are only 5 feet, and so if you have to have 8-foot fence away from the house, you're gonna end up with a discussion with your neighbor who may not be on board. So I'm wondering, do we have latitude to allow the building inspector to work through those conflicts, or are we gonna have people in front of us saying, my neighbor won't deal with his fence and it's 8 feet from my house? So, something to think about.
I mean, are we talking about neighbors who share a fence, or the fence is on the neighbor's
so I
property?
can imagine 2 houses that are 10 feet apart, they have a fence they share, and they're attached to their houses, and there's no way to have it 8 feet from both houses, because they share a fence that's within 5 feet, because the side setbacks are often 5 feet.
That's a great point, Counselor, if I may. So, and I can't draw, my wife's the artist, not me. When we're thinking about the fencing, it's not from your house out as much as it is 8 feet of that fence line. So that fencing 8 feet, and I understand what you're saying, there's still areas that are gonna be potentially affected neighbor to neighbor, right?
A gate to the backyard.
Exactly right. I totally understand that, sir, but, you know, measuring 8 feet, I just want to be clear of the actual fence, not away from the house, okay?
So it could go 5 and 3.
5 and 3, that would meet it, yes, sir. Yeah. That's a great question, though.
Which is bizarre.
It's,
Emily?
Yeah,
We'll just move on.
yeah, I can argue some of those things, and I know some of it's over email. Because, yeah, I found these requirements a little confusing, especially because everything we usually have And building requirements for triggers is always like, does it meet the criteria, yes or no? But this is almost like talking in the negative. So it's kind of my first point. I was like, why? I had to think about the requirement and then be like, okay, the opposite of this means this. And I don't know if we could change that. And then following on to that, it's just, this is the first time we've actually ever talked about a major alteration and building code that we like trigger. For example, sustainability, we've talked about like what would be that thing that triggers new code, right?
Right.
And I don't know if we could double down on that, but those are kind of two questions in one, so.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about a major alteration, it's an addition.
Yeah.
And it would have to be at least 500 square feet or larger in order for these codes to kick in. So how many of those do we have within the city? Not too many. A lot of the work that goes on in the city are interior alterations, which are exempt from this code. So, now granted, there's a lot of permits that we do issue that aren't considered a major alteration. They're roof replacements and they're siding replacements, and clearly those are, we have some established triggers for, you know, one, what part of that parcel falls within class 1 or class 2, what's the nature of the project that we're doing, and then subsequently we'll where we didn't in the past used to have to review these over-the-counter permits. That's typically what we call them because they require very little staff review. That's going to change, and it will either be taking up more time on behalf of staff, which it just is what it is. Do we check those types of permits in and review them through the city departments, or is that something that myself or one of my staff can vet before they issue a permit? But I don't know if I was direct enough about your question.
It was speaking about the negative, if you don't mind. The building code already kind of does that in chapter 1 of the actual IBC. So that's kind of where the IWUI code, and this does not match the IWUI whatsoever when it comes to this, International Wildland Urban Interface Code. That's kind of where they took it from, was that the precedent set by the International Building Code.
And we're talking things that are exempt from permit, for instance.
Yeah.
And we rarely issue fence permits.
Yeah.
The reality is nobody builds a fence more than 7 feet tall. If they do, they get a variance through planning, through planning commission. And even when we do, the only other fences that we tend to run into that require some staff oversight are fences that are in the front of the properties that deal with sight lines and such, for engineering purposes. But it will be a bit of a change, and education and notification will be very important on this part of it, especially for our contractors. A lot of the roofing contractors and those folks, they're not going to have a clue. So.
And just really quickly, just to reiterate, this is code that is being driven by the state, by legislation. We do not have flexibility to say we want to make massive changes to it unless we take the core code that they've created and we make it even more restrictive. So that's why we have language here that is maybe uncommon or unfamiliar to us, because it's not code we wrote. It's code that we're adopting that's been written by a group that got together to create a statewide WUI code for Colorado.
Patty, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks. So it's only triggered by additions of 500 square feet or that certain criteria. How many of those we typically see a year, and how many, like the differences in the maps, like the state map versus our map? Are we talking in like we'd see one additional one per year, or 20, or like what?
I mean, I don't put my hands on every one of those residential permits. Robert Marsh does, my plan reviewer. I do end up seeing a lot of it just because I'm out in the field doing inspections. But I would say I could get you a more direct number after and just shoot you an email. But if I had to guess, it'd be in the 10 to 15 range, addition-wise.
Okay.
And
Roof replacement wise.
a lot more roof replacements, a lot more, not so much siding, but it does come about. And The reality is that some of our policies and procedures are basically in alignment with this code as it's written with regards to the triggers. We look at roof replacements, and if you're doing a roof replacement where you're not affecting more than 25%, and we call that a repair. And that's not required to be permitted. You're allowed to make those repairs on your structure without being permitted to do so. And the same would go for siding, for replacing the exterior cladding. We set those levels to say, look, if you're gonna be replacing more than 25% of the roof, the whole roof has to be replaced. And in this case, that obviously does trigger some additional code requirements to meet a Class A requirement. And it will be more expensive, there's no doubt. I took the time to put together or get a little bit of information from the web as it relates to what it means to have a Class A roof on your home. And typically, the majority of the roofs here in Golden are what is a Class C roof. It's an architectural shingle that has fiberglass, it's fiberglass reinforced. And then it has a 15-pound felt as the underlayment. So to meet a Class A requirement, you still need the architectural shingle that's reinforced with fiberglass, but now you need to have a, your underlayment can no longer be a 15-pound felt. It has to be an underlayment that meets a standard, and there's a couple of different standards that it has to meet, ASTM E108 and UL 790 standards, and they just basically deal with fire type stuff. And what that means is that in Golden, we already require ice and water shield on the eaves of your homes to prevent ice damming and things of that nature. The entire roof surface would have to be covered with ice and water shield in order to meet a Class A requirement. And if you want to compare prices, 15-pound felt runs approximately 6 to 8 cents per square foot, whereas your ice and water shield and Grace's just happens to be a common brand name, that it's about 90 cents to $1.30 a square foot. So, and that's for the entire roof surface to meet the Class A.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Yeah, Laura?
Thanks. I just have some clarifying questions that hope we can then move on, because we don't have unlimited amounts of time. The first is the applicability, which has been discussed about the things, that's only for the moderate or for the moderate and low identified on the map?
Yes, yes, ma'am. So the applicability is to those who are identified in either moderate or low.
Moderate
Yes.
or low, so
Yes.
it's all
Yep.
of the properties?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The second is, we have a choice of maps, which we can do under state law. We can take a state map or more restrictive. What I'm reading is in the code, the modifications, because we're allowed to go more restrictive, other than designating agencies, the only is the vinyl fencing. Is that the only code change from the state code?
So there were a
That
number.
would be more restrictive for Golden?
Yeah, so, yes, ma'am, good question. So there were some vegetation requirements that I placed into here based off of what Jefferson County has done. They've eliminated junipers within 30 feet of the home, considering how hot they burn. That was a good decision made. So the vegetation in Class 2 has been adopted straight from Jefferson
Okay, so that
County.
would be an
Yep.
additional modification
Yep.
we'd be adopting into our Golden?
Yes, correct. And that
Adoption
lives in the
state
Golden Wildfire Resiliency Code, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And, yes, ma'am, go
Yeah,
ahead, sorry.
I just think, it'd be helpful, since we're gonna have to vote on this,
Mhm.
to look at the state code and then very clearly detail out whatever additional restrictions. we
That's a
want.
great point, and I've already done it for you. There's a document in there that has a little abbreviation, little letter abbreviation next to every single code item, that says if it's G, it's Golden Wildfire Resiliency Code. If it's F, it's from our fire code. I just replaced what the CWRC had with what we've already adopted. Also B for what we already had in our building code, so things of that nature, so you can actually go line by line to see what, and then J for Jefferson County, what they're looking at doing, so. And then everything else is from the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code.
Okay, so we have.
Yep, you
we
have that. Yes, ma'am.
That's in our
Thank you.
113-page document.
I've got to go back and look, Counselor, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long document that we have in
And
there.
so that's helpful, because we
Yes.
will have to come back and discuss this again,
Mhm.
so we can look for that. I am in agreement with Gerhard of the uncertainty of financial impact once this is implemented statewide and what it will mean for property owners, in particularly regarding their insurance policies. And so, given that the uncertainty and the law around insurance doesn't even start until this starts, I'd prefer to go on the more, the fewer properties in the early adoption of the map and then revisit once we see that statewide. Because as we know, there are always lots and lots of unintended consequences when the state decides to do something statewide. And I'd rather not catch our property owners up in that mix. If we have an opportunity to take a little bit of a wait and see and then revisit after.
Sure, sounds great. And also just to your point, Counselor, the ordinance that legal team has worked with me and Scott Greer on, all those, we're adopting it by reference, the CWRC by reference, just like we do our other codes, our fire code and building code. So all the amendments in there are what's different from the CWRC. So that's a really clean way of looking at it, I guess, if you wanted to look at it that way more easily.
I appreciate that you'll be coming back. I'm right now in support of map number C, the ESPW, to create another acronym, the Enhanced Structure Protection Wildfire Map. It's recommended. I just don't think we have the luxury of wait and see. I think it's important to not kick the can down the road even more when it comes to what we need to do in Golden to protect our structures, our homes, specifically our homes that are backing up to open space and other combustibles. So those are that's where I am right now. I just have a quick question about map number C, if you wanted to put it up there, but you probably don't even need to look at it. There are numerous homes in these neighborhoods where the line, are you okay, Patty? Okay. The line between class 1 and class 2 is someone's property. They are class 1 on one side of their house and class 2 on the other. How would you address that? And additionally, how are we addressing the split of class 1 and class 2 in our city open space?
It's a great question. So I'll take the first one first. So if a parcel at the state map level was cut in half by moderate and low, you have to take the most restrictive. So it becomes moderate. If any amount, and the direction I received from the board was, if any amount of a color touches an individual's property parcel, then that entire parcel gets color coded that color. So that hopefully clears that up just a little bit. In consideration of open space, to your second question, this map that the state created has nothing to do with open space. It has to do with that, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of it either, but it doesn't take a look at any of the gulches that run through into our city that would carry fire into and nearby our properties. And it doesn't take into consideration, for example, like Kenny Run. It would not, though, affect how we're treating those areas within our city. That is a part of our CWPP process, along with the other processes that Parks and Rec and Forestry are dealing with for wildfire mitigation. I hope that clarifies that,
It does,
Counselor.
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually am in support of map number 1 for now as well. There's nothing in here that precludes a homeowner from hardening their property, and I would just encourage that people do so. I think that's the first step. So I'm in favor of that map, and I will also say that given the example of the Marshall Fire in, very low fuels, and it was the embers, hardening your property has got to be number 1, because there's going to be embers. They're going to get into the urban areas, which are not even part of this map. So I just can't emphasize enough that it comes down to homeowners. That's going to make the difference. Putting this in place is a requirement by the state, but that's not going to move the needle. What's going to move the needle is people hardening their properties.
And to your point, Counselor, we've already had permits come in for people up off the fronts, and they knew this was coming, and they all the improvements that they've made to their home were specific to hardening. So it is an education aspect to get people to understand the value in this code.
So I know we're running out of time,
Yeah.
and so we're gonna bring this back. We will have it as an ordinance, so we will have two opportunities, and we will have, as opposed to our first reading being on consent, which is our standard, we will have that as an open conversation, so we can continue to talk. I've heard from several of you with regards to which map you prefer, so we can have a focus in terms of what we're putting forward, but I'd like to hear Emily, Sandra, Patty, who's stepped away. I haven't heard from you all, so that will help us with direction.
I like the wait and see method.
Okay.
Yeah, just keep it simple, fast.
The same financial consideration concern. On the one hand, we should all be concerned in doing hardening like Counselor Cameron recommended, but from the state perspective, starting with the low and slow
Okay.
until we understand that better.
Okay, that's helpful. That's,
Mhm.
I think,
That's
all
what
that we need.
Everybody has what they need? Okay, great.
Great.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
y'all. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. We have run over a bit. Are folks okay coming back at 7, or would they like to come a few minutes before? Can we have dinner faster?
Thanks for being patient. We needed a little extra time for our study session this evening, but we'll get our regular business meeting started. It is February 10th, 2026, and let's start by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is roll call.
Counselor Connect?
Present.
Counselor Cameron?
Here.
Counselor Evans?
Here.
Mayor Weinberg?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vitry?
Here.
Counselor Fowl?
Here.
Counselor Krasinski?
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum?
Thank you. Having received no changes to the agenda is approved as has been presented. Next up, we have a public comment period. It is our only public comment period for this evening. And I'll just note that we did receive public comment via email and open up the floor to anybody who would like to speak to council tonight. You're welcome to the podium and have 3 minutes to share your thoughts. Nobody's jumping up. I'll close the public comment period and we will move on. If there's any council or staff response to the public comment that was received via email, give the opportunity now. All right, we'll keep moving. Next up, we have council staff comments and new business, opportunity to provide updates, share information with council. I will start at the end. Councilor Krasinski.
Perfect. They'll probably stress on it too, but we have Ward 1, Ward 2, and District 1 meeting on February 23rd, which is Monday, at Wrigley's at 5. So come meet and greet and hang out with Councilor Fowl and then also Councilor Vitry and I. So see you there.
Great. Just one quick, I wanted to just highlight February 25th is Hunger Free Golden's Empty Bowls event. So now's the time to go to hungerfreegolden.org and click on the right buttons and you can get your ticket, which is free, and then make a donation at the event as you fill your empty bowl.
The Community Marketing Board met this morning. We did choose a contractor to help us design our strategic plan moving forward. We also discussed the Welcome Center. The Welcome Center presented 2 different statements of work with 2 different prices. We had a great conversation and we went back to the Welcome Center with a collaborative, combined approach of a different option and a different cost to the city. So we will see what the Welcome Center Board comes back with, and hopefully we can still partner with them.
Thanks for that update. Councilor Evans.
Okay, a couple things. First, Coffee with a Counselor. We had a very successful Cookies with a Counselor last night at the community center. We had Ben Moline from Coors and Ann Byerly, Public Works Director, to talk about the Clear Creek water and all things Coors. It was very well attended. I appreciate everyone who came. Our next one is March 7th at 10 a.m. at the community center, and we'll be talking about community engagement then, so please join us then. Also wanted to highlight that applications are open for boards and commissions. So if you're looking for ways to get more involved with the city, check out the boards and commissions, the vacancies, and apply for a seat.
Yeah, I was hoping to give an update on GURA, Golden Urban Renewal, but due to a lack of quorum, we did not meet last night. So I would again encourage people to apply for new boards and commissions as a way to ensure that they are engaged in the community. What we were not able to do was move forward on a grant program for people who lost, businesses who lost money in the URAs during the PSPS in December. So I assume that will come back to us next month. But please look at boards and commissions through cityofgolden.gov.net. Thank you.
Third voice here. We love applicants. I'm excited to be part of that subcommittee and helping with some of the decisioning, the interview questions or updates to interview questions. So please, we need that community focus. So that was my topic. I might ask to start this way sometimes. My stuff gets taken.
All right, we can mix it up. A couple of things, I'm not gonna speak about Golden's and Golden, because our city manager, I think will share about that. And just a huge thank you to everyone involved and all of the efforts on such a large event and significant event. So a lot of volunteers, a lot of staff time, all the departments, really thank you for an excellent job. The two things that I wanted to just share with council over the last 2 weeks, I did provide testimony at the state legislature, and they voted in direct opposition to my testimony, so I'm not doing great convincing anybody, but it's already moved, not just out of committee, but out of the House, and that is House Bill 26-1001, which is the bill that allows certain entities, organizations, public schools, state universities, housing authorities to build what they want, irrespective of local zoning. So that passed very quickly out of the House. It goes on to the Senate. So I'll continue to try to engage in that over in the Senate. And then the second one was just yesterday, and that is our representative's bill. Representative Titone ran a bill, House Bill 26-1036. Wouldn't directly be a tool that Golden would potentially consider for housing, but very important tool for some of the mountain communities, and that is the opportunity to go to the voters to ask for a vacancy tax, to be able to use that funding to fund affordable workforce housing in their community, and that failed to get out of committee. So, yeah. So we're not doing so great on the housing bills, but we'll keep following and considering the impacts, potentially positive, negative, to the city. The second thing I want to mention, also housing related, is just to share that there seems to be a lot of interest from developers in the RFQ process that the state has put out there for the land at the Lookout Mountain Youth Center. So that RFQ went out. It is due next month, I think. I don't remember the exact date. There are a lot of developers interested. I have had conversations with several of them, high-level conversations where they're seeking to understand our community, our housing needs, that type of thing, and directing them if they have specific questions about our zoning, our process, you know, anything like that to the city team. So just wanted to be open about that I am taking their meetings. We are having conversation about Golden as a community, but any specifics about, you know, our process for development is being referred to staff. And with that, we'll move on. Any of these? Nothing?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I wanted to take just a minute and do a little bit of a recap with regards to Golden and Golden and share kudos. Meredith, in particular, our communications and special events director, put in just an inordinate amount of time and energy into this event. As you all know, last year's event had a number of challenges, some that were way outside of our control in terms of very serious accidents on two highways that caused a whole lot of rerouted traffic to come through at exactly the wrong time in Golden. But we took that feedback and we really tried to work to resolve that issue and a number of other challenges that we'd seen as Golden and Golden's grew in popularity and as it became sort of a social media phenomena. And Meredith really spearheaded that effort, along with Diane Tiberi and Derek Schimmel, our special events and our community marketing manager. Claire, who is here as well, our management fellow, was a big part of it. She was running around the event a bunch as well. But there were months and months of planning that went into this before the event, and I just want to give them some public recognition for what they did. We also had at the event a whole lot of folks from Public Works working to make sure that we had roads closed properly, that we had barricades in place, that we made that as safe an event as we could, along with our fire department and our police department as well participating. And then I think at least 70 some odd volunteers that came out to help with the event. Just again, a tremendous improvement over years past, and by far and away the biggest Golden and Golden event that we've had. We believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 16,000 people that came for the event, something over 5,000 in terms of the number of dogs. I believe the count was just under 4,200 people that rode the shuttle as well. And so, again, just a massive amount of people for a community of our size. And again, I think so many of the things that crew did to spread the event out, to spread the time out, to address traffic, to address security, to provide different things for people to do rather than just standing in the middle of the street with their dog and taking a photo once, was really just brilliant. And they also brought in sponsorships to the event to help to cover costs that are associated with running something of this scale and to professionalize it to a different degree. And the business community was so involved and so much, so grateful, I think, for the success of the event as well. In particular, in light of what happened in December with the power shutoff and the impact that had on our local businesses during really what is one of the busiest times of the year for them, to be able to have an event like this where we were seeing, again, lines out the door of most of the storefronts, of most of the restaurants throughout the course of the day. We talked a little bit ourselves about the fact that folks were in town for days prior to the event itself and then stayed, in some cases, beyond the event. So really a great opportunity to boost the economy locally. And so again, just kudos across the board to the team that put it together. So that's it.
Thank you. Agreed. Any other updates? Are you coming to give us an update? Okay. Yay.
I just wanted to provide a quick update. I know many people have noticed that our videos haven't been showing on the website the same way that they have in the past. A piece of our equipment went down that directs the cameras and the audio. So to kind of work around that, we have a video camera in the back of the room and we've been streaming onto YouTube, which still has a live link on our website that people can watch council meetings and planning commission meetings live on the website, similar to before. They're also posted on our YouTube page and posted in the Granicus place where meetings are usually posted. So all other meetings are posted on Granicus the day after they air. We've been looking at what piece of equipment we need to buy to replace. It's been a little bit more complicated because of buying new equipment for the new building and what piece of equipment will talk to the new equipment and our current equipment. I won't go into more detail than that. It's not very interesting, but that's why it's been a little bit more complicated. But we've found the equipment that we need. We're in the process of purchasing it. It shouldn't be much longer, but we're kind of working around it as needed. So just wanted to provide that update.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's great. I didn't realize that the live option via YouTube was available. So thanks for that update. All right, we will move on in our agenda. Up next, we have consent matters, and we'll have opportunity to discuss, but let's get a motion on the table regarding consent matters.
Move adoption of consent matters as presented.
Second?
Thank you. Comments, thoughts before we vote? A lot of items in there, yeah.
Thank you. I've got a couple questions about the housing needs assessment update, and so I was wondering if we could talk about that for a minute. So the addendum, what we're voting on today is just the addendum to the housing needs assessment to comply with state law. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. And
Correct.
okay. How often is the whole assessment? It was approved before I was on council, so that I'm not. This is my first time seeing the whole thing. How often will it be evaluated and updated?
Yeah, I don't know that we have a schedule for our own needs assessment. Again, there's state law that was passed after the adoption of the Golden Housing Needs Assessment that requires every 5 years, every 6 years, thank you, Sarah, every 6 years that you have a new plan or a revised plan adopted and submitted to the state. What we were trying to do was use our plan that we created before the state legislation came into place, submit that to the state to meet that compliance requirement. When we did that submission, they identified a few items that we needed to add to the plan, and that's what this addendum represents. There's no change to the policy, there's no change to our approach, there's no change to our strategy as it relates to housing within Golden, but this was an effort for us, again, to be in compliance with that state law.
And is the 6 years counted from when we initially passed it or from when this addendum is added?
For the state, it will be from the point at which we submitted to the state. And so I would say that's last year.
April of 25.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, and then, so you said that the addendum won't change the goals or the strategies or the actions or anything like that. It is truly just more reporting?
Correct.
Okay, all right, and then April 2025 plus 6 years, are we planning, that's when we have to have it done
Mhm.
by, is there, given the changes in, movement in and out and economic drivers and employment in Golden, is there a desire to update it before we are statutorily required to?
That will be a council direction. So at this point, we've not received direction from council to suggest we should go back and revisit and redo the plan. I think that it would not be a surprise to any of you on council that although we've identified action steps and we've made progress in certain areas, there is a lot that is left to be done. And so the need for an update to the needs assessment is probably not necessary right now. But again, at some point in the future, we would expect that council will want us to go back and revisit the numbers and the calculations and the expectations. But that's not something that we have on the work plan for 2026, certainly.
Yeah, so just to add on to that, during my time on planning commission, when we were doing the comprehensive plan, which I know we haven't seen yet, we kept talking about the housing needs assessment being refreshed, and it was constantly brought up. And given that we have a lot of documents that do relate to this, I was a little surprised to see that we didn't have any updated data other than the needs for like accessibility and the addendum, different materials. I think it'd be really useful because we've seen a lot of change since 2022. I mean, just in the short time I've been here, and I feel like we keep seeing that, and it's been rapid. I don't know if we need to decide on this now. I think it would be useful to point out for future discussions because, yeah, this is impactful to us. That's all I gotta say.
Councilor Cameron.
I want to follow up as well and say we will have to review our commitment for Prop 123 monies that we will apply for. We've got a target of 26 units per year for 3 years. When we reassess that, that might be a good time to sort of check in. But I will just say, despite the fact that I would like to see the numbers updated, we already had a target of 3,000 over 10 years, which was daunting and undoable. If the numbers drop to 2,000 in 10 years, it'll still be daunting and undoable. So I don't think it will fundamentally change the kinds of actions we take. And so I'm actually going to agree with the city manager that this is actually just about getting in compliance with state requirements, and that's basically it. Redoing the study isn't going to change fundamentally what we have to do. So that's my take.
And Councilor Cameron and I agree often, despite the tone of that response.
And I agree with that statement as well. I also want to point out that since the city of Golden did ours, Jefferson County has now done one, so that is a bigger lens that is inclusive of Golden, because we know the housing needs is not specific to our city boundaries. So Jefferson County has done one. DRCOG has done a housing study with data for the entire metro region that they cover, and so that has happened subsequent to ours to give that, again, that bigger lens. And then just to mention, I received a message, we're gonna have our first meeting at some point here, but I am serving as the city representative to the Department of Local Affairs Regional Planning Roundtable Commission. And so that regional planning through DOLA has opportunity to submit requests for funding and for different things for regional collaboration around this issue. So there's a lot of things that have happened that affect what we're doing here in Golden and opportunities for funding or additional collaboration. So I think that, there's things happening beyond just the letter of what's in, the plan.
And one other note, Sarah Vane, who's sitting in the back, also reminded me that at the end of 2027, we will have a housing action plan that is also due. And so that will have a public input process, and that will do some updating that will help to inform the needs assessment as well. So there is some more action coming.
A lot of things.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on any of the consent matters for discussion before we take a vote? Yes.
One quick follow-up. This is actually the first time in this addendum that we saw the need for 56 supportive housing units. So I will definitely want to see what the county does around that, and sooner than later, maybe before the end of 27, we see what actions we want to take around supportive housing, because that's the first time we've seen that. And I just want to thank staff for answering my questions around the stream gauge and funding of that and our commitments. And so I just want to thank staff for that. That's it.
Thanks. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the consent matters are approved as presented. Next up, it happens to be one of my favorite things, the National Community Survey results. I really do enjoy when we do this every 3 years, so.
Well, hi all. Claire Nowak, Management Fellow. I'm not giving the presentation tonight. We actually have an expert with us, Sonia Whiting. She's here from POLCO and the National Research Center. She is their Director of Data and Insights. So you are in very capable hands, and she's going to share all of those interesting insights. Thank you.
So yes, I am the Executive Vice President of Data and Insights at POLCO, and I've been working with local governments to do research for 20 years, and about 8 years before that, helping local or different state agencies with economics. So I'm very excited to be here. So I'm glad you were excited, Mayor, as well. I love data and love it when I meet people who love data. I'd first like to thank Claire and Meredith because they provided so much thoughtful feedback in this whole process, and also acknowledge my colleague Jason Newmeyer, who did the bulk of the work and then sent me to do the presentation as I'm local. So just a little bit about POLCO for those that might be new to us. We provide tools to empower resident voices and visualize community metrics to support strategic planning, budgeting, and performance tracking. The NRC is the research arm of POLCO. We started in 1994 in POLCO, or in Boulder, and merged with POLCO about 7 years ago to bring technology plus our survey expertise together. We're well known for our national benchmarking surveys, such as the National Community Survey, which you would implement every 3 years. Before we dive into the results, I just want to emphasize the variety of ways these results can be used. Most commonly, jurisdictions are using it to monitor trends in resident opinion over time, inform those budgeting and strategic plans, assess community needs as they change over time, and measure the impacts of policies and programs that you've put in place in between those surveys. The National Community Survey, or the NCS specifically, is a 5-page comprehensive survey. It's used to assess resident opinion about community and local government. The NCS questions are into these 10 facets of community livability to provide a holistic picture of Golden from the perspective of residents. The facets were identified through extensive survey research and the work that we've done with communities like yours over the last 30 years. So these survey items, there's many survey items related to each of these 10 facets. I won't go through every single one of them, but I'm going to give you a broad overview tonight. Note that the facets do align with your government departments, and so your staff can easily find the data that's kind of most relevant for them to be tracking over time. I'm going to go into a bunch of details here because how you conduct a survey really matters. We representative of your community and that you can trust this data. So we select our sample without bias, oversample multifamily housing, and make statistical corrections for common response disparities, such as older adults always respond more than younger adults in every survey we ever do. And we start with the US Postal Service list of all your households in relevant zip codes, and then we compare it to a GIS boundary file to make sure that they are in your community, and then select 3,000 addresses randomly to receive that survey. We send a postcard invitation first, and that's to an online survey, and then it's followed a week later with a paper survey, and that also has that QR code URL if they want to go online and use it as a reminder, but it also has the paper if they have challenges using responding digitally or they just don't enjoy it. It comes with a postage paid envelope, so they can easily just send that right back. You had a great response. You had 593 surveys completed and a margin of error of plus or minus 4%. That is better than best practices, what we're aiming for, so that was great news and a really engaged community. So once the data was in, the demographics of the respondents are compared to the most recent census and American Community Survey, and then we actually statistically weight so that we can correct for that over-representation of older adults, for instance, rather of the younger adults, so that the results of your community or your results overall reflect your community correctly. Additionally, everyone in the community might want to participate, so we separately, starting November 6th, publicized a community-wide open participation survey, and 86 people responded. Those results are actually in a separate part of the report, and I won't be discussing them at this meeting, but you can see them online, and we think of them often as just the opinions of those who are a little bit more engaged. So one of the advantages of participating in the National Community Survey is that you can compare your ratings to those across the country, and then you can also select custom benchmarks to compare to. So we have about 400 communities in our database and 35 in the Front Range, and so you are compared to both of those groups. So on to the results. There's a ton of information in the report, as I mentioned, including a lot of cross-tabulations by geography and demographics. And we won't cover it all here, but I'm going to point out main themes and then invite you to dig deeper in the report. So first, I'm going to show you some high-level results. In the survey, we have two questions that ask directly about these larger facets of community livability. The first one asks about the quality of each. The quality, just to orient you to this chart, the quality questions were asked on a 4-point scale where the respondent could choose excellent, good, fair, or poor. We consider excellent and good to be positive ratings. And for ease of presentation and comparison, we just showed the excellent plus good here and throughout the presentation. We also show comparison to the national benchmark and with the color of the bar charts. And if there's difference over time, we actually have a little arrow beside them. There's none on this slide, but there will be in future. And we also have a little arrow up for those custom benchmarks from comparing to the Front Range. So the second question uses these same broad aspects of community livability, and it's centered on importance. So we ask what the community thinks you should focus on in the next 2 years. We ask about the quality and then the importance because then we can create a matrix so that you can look at if there's check and see if there's anything that is maybe of lower quality, but really high importance, that might be a focus area that you might want to look into. Whereas there might be things that you have really high quality, they're a bit of lower importance, you can probably stay the course. Or if you were in a time when you really had to shave something off in a budget, then those are areas that you might consider in terms of what your community is valuing. So here is that comparison. And you can see, it's just one way to interpret the data. It's kind of small, and it is in your report, so if you want to look more deeply. But in this case, the only really large gap where the quality is smaller than the importance is in mobility. And from the previous slide, we saw that mobility had a 62, overall transportation had a 62% rating for excellent good, and that was similar to the benchmark. So while there is a gap, you are doing fairly well in mobility. We'll get into a few more details on mobility in a few slides. So continuing on the kind of higher level, we have 123 survey items that you can be compared to on the benchmarks. And in this case, 40 received ratings that were higher than the national benchmarks, so that is really good. And 79 received similar ratings, 4 received lower ratings. Ratings are considered similar if they are within 10 points and different if they are more than 10 points, either positive or negative. Lower than the benchmark were cost of living, ease of public parking, availability of affordable quality housing, and attracting people from diverse backgrounds. Much higher, there are so many higher, I'm not going to name them all, but much higher than the benchmark, which means it's 20 points or more, were related to Golden as a place to visit and recreate. Looking at those custom benchmarks, which were the 35 Front Range communities, of those 123 items, 69 received higher ratings. So that's a really excellent result because the Front Range are pretty high quality communities. So, and 53 received similar ratings and only 1 received a lower rating. And that lower rating was for ease of public parking. Much higher were our adult education opportunities, yard waste pickup, and items related to recreation and tourism once again. Then a really good benchmark is yourself over time, very important one. And so we compared you to the 2022 survey. 5 received higher ratings, 104 similar, and 14 received lower ratings. So for the most part, your trends are really stable. The results, I should note that the results were statistically different if they were 5.8% or more different from last year. So they can be somewhat small changes, but that is a statistical difference. Higher than 2022 were aspects of safety and public transportation, and lower were related to economic conditions, utilities, and governance. So on to some key findings, just digging a little bit deeper on what stood out to us. But note again, there's lots of additional data, so please dig in and send any questions. So to start, Golden is a great place to live. 9 in 10 residents gave excellent or good ratings to Golden as a place to live, the quality of life in the city, and the overall image of the city. These were higher than the national and Front Range benchmarks. Most residents plan to remain in the city in the next 5 years, and most would recommend living in the city to someone if they asked. Golden also feels very safe to residents. Almost every respondent felt safe in their neighborhood and downtown during the day. Almost all felt safe from violent crime or property crime. A few more were concerned about safety from fire, flood, natural disaster, but still 70% were saying that they felt at least somewhat safe. And safety from property crime saw an improvement from 2022 and was also above the Front Range benchmark. So those are those little arrows that I noted earlier. Looking at services related to safety, 9 in 10 residents were happy with fire and EMS services. Around 8 in 10 gave good marks to animal control, police and sheriff services, and crime prevention. Animal control and crime prevention were higher than the front range benchmark, and crime prevention increased from 2022. Like many places in the country, the economy is a concern to residents. Overall economic health, Golden as a place to work, and economic development had better ratings than other Front Range communities. But along with employment opportunities and cost of living, cost of living saw a decline in rating from 2022. Only 1 in 7 residents had positive ratings for the cost of living, and 1 in 10 the availability of affordable quality housing. These were below the national benchmarks, but they were similar to the Front Range. Your natural environment and recreation opportunities really shine in these results. Nearly all residents gave great ratings to the overall quality of the natural environment in Golden, cleanliness, water resources, open space, and preservation of natural areas. And they were also higher than the national and Front Range benchmarks, except for the bottom, air quality, which was similar, but again, quite a high rating with 75%. Similarly, nearly all residents were happy with recreational opportunities, facilities, classes, parks, trails in Golden. All ratings were higher than both the national benchmark, and most were above the Front Range benchmark as well. So residents did indicate that transportation was of high importance to them, and that overall rating was moderate in quality. However, many aspects do have pretty good ratings. So walking and biking was considered easy in Golden, and easier than nationally and in the Front Range. Car travel was similar to other places with moderate ratings. Public parking was of concern, as noted before. And public transportation was similar to benchmarks, but did increase from 2022. Many aspects of mobility services were above the national and Front Range benchmarks, including street cleaning, snow removal, sidewalk maintenance, and street repair. The survey also included a few questions that were custom made for you about emerging topics. The first question asked about possible additional actions on specific community priorities and how important they were to the residents. So topping the list was bike and pedestrian safety and housing affordability. 42% said those were essential, and 7 in 10 said it was at least very important. Less essential, but still important, were small business support and public transportation. At least 2/3 said that each of these was very important. And almost no one said it was not ill. The next question asked about how often residents went downtown for a variety of activities. Highest on the list was visiting parks, recreating near Clear Creek, and eating and drinking downtown. And then on the second page, we have some of the lower ones. Still using downtown services was still pretty high with 66%, doing it at least once every month. And lower were, or least commonly attended, were the special events, both those that are regularly occurring and those that are annual. Which that makes sense for especially annual. You can't go monthly. So in summary of this summary, Golden is a very valued place to live. It's safe with great natural amenities, easy to navigate on foot and bike. Folks have some economic concerns that parallel other communities, and there's areas for improvement in housing, transit, and parking.
Hi, I just wanted to jump in a little bit on this presentation just to draw council's attention to some of the strategic plan, which is obviously our next item on the agenda, but just wanted to call out some of the projects that have to do with the kind of topic areas that you heard a lot from in the survey. So mobility and transportation was one that came up a lot, and so we have several projects that have to do with that, including the Orchard expansion, Highway 93, alternatives design, and the complete street on Ford. And then small business support, the community marketing strategic plan that Councilor Vitry mentioned earlier, wayfinding signage, comprehensive plan update, and housing affordability, funding housing for all, regional homelessness projects, healthy housing project, something like that. And then environmental quality in parks, lots of projects with that, forest canopy study, Tony Grams's park improvements, sustainability policies and grant requests, universal recycling ordinance, energy benchmarking, safety and emergency preparedness. You heard a lot about that in the survey. So that really circles back to our wildfire management resiliency strategy and some of those community engagement projects as well. So just wanted to kind of make a tie-in to the two together. And with that, I think we'll take questions on the survey, and happy to answer anything council has.
Thank you. I'm sure there's questions or thoughts. Councilor Brown?
A quick question. I think it's easy because I think you've already done it for me. Because I flagged, it would be interesting to see which of the strategic initiatives have to do with parking, given parking
Okay,
was
that's
the
another
single
category.
lowest
Yeah.
number on here, or one of the lowest numbers on here. And so I think adding that to a
Yeah.
bullet would be good.
I'm happy to do that.
Councilor Cameron?
Yeah, my takeaway when I first looked at it was, wow, the number of younger people who did the survey was so low that you had to, normalize it back to our demographics. Could you at least answer, was the amount that you had to move old people down and young people up in terms of weighting comparable to what you've seen in other places, or are we an outlier with more old and less young?
No, I would say you're definitely comparable with other places. Younger folks do respond in much lower levels. So we have in some communities started to do more outreach on I had mentioned that we had the open participation survey. We have in some communities started to do a little more outreach there and use statistical weighting to actually blend in some from the non-random survey to have a little bit more of the younger adults. But overall, even though they're responding in lower numbers than we would like, than we would prefer, there are studies that have shown that with the weighting, we're still representing the community well. So studies where they have like larger federal surveys that they do nationally, that where they're basically comparing, like the federal government or these federal surveys have a lot larger budget to make sure that they actually can pay folks to participate and get much higher numbers, and then they compare some smaller survey efforts asking the same questions and get comparable results. So we feel pretty confident that while we're not getting the numbers that we would like from the younger folks, that they are represented well in the overall balance.
I heard all that and I understand all that, but I would be open to having you guys look at those opt-in surveys and see whether they're comparable or not, because I didn't dig into those details, but we often say we're getting the data because it matches, but I don't know. I'd like to see those numbers come up in all of our social media anyway.
Yeah.
So how do we get those younger folks
I would also definitely
engaged?
invite you to, when you look at the online survey results, you can look at the results by age group, so you can see where they differ. I was looking at before I came in, and overall there wasn't a strong difference in a lot of areas. I noticed that in mobility, older adults did have higher ratings for transit and for parking, probably got more time to do it maybe. But but there weren't, so you can kind of look at where those differences might
Okay.
be.
Yeah, I don't want to beat the topic, but I would like a link to those online results, because I don't think we got that in this. We didn't get a link to the live results. Thank you.
And I know that has come up every year about the having to wait across our age demographics. So at least comparatively across the every 3-year results, it seems like we've had to
And I will say
address
the waiting is the best practice, and we always do it. Like, even when we have a stronger amount of younger adults, it's probably not going to be in the same proportion. And there, there's other groups like renters also are lower responders for the most part. So we're trying to, with waiting, make sure that we're correcting for several socio-demographics.
Similar question or observation on the demographics. It's really interesting that, so the target, that is like basically the percentage of the adult community that fits into that demographic. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
I'm not sure.
Like, so on I'm looking at the unweighted, weighted, and target. And the
okay, yes, yeah.
Okay, all right. It's really interesting that men 18 to 34 make up 27% of our demographics. Women 18 to 34 make up 13%. So that's exactly the opposite.
Interesting, yeah.
And I mean, it makes sense. We've got,
Yeah.
School of Mines, but the 18 to 34 men who make up 27% had a 6% response, or 6% weighted,
yeah.
unweighted. So they had to be weighted a whole lot more than any of the other demographic groups. Is that unusual?
Definitely younger men are the lowest responders in every survey. So it's not unusual in that sense. Probably the proportion that you have in your population is unusual.
Right, weighting over
Weighting
a quarter.
at, like, giving, so it's essentially saying that we're giving weight to, like, a 5-point weight to that person for the most part to get them up to 27. That is not that unusual for some groups to be weighted that much.
It's over a quarter of our population, though, the weighted and target, so
Yeah.
that feels a little disproportionate, and I understand it's best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it is shocking to me that so few people have that much
It's like
influence.
It's like the Senate in Wyoming.
Yep.
I had a few thoughts, and it's not questions at all, just thoughts. The first was, it's really interesting to be able to see the movement in numbers and reflect on the programs that the city engaged in that had direct results. So between the 2022, so property crime, when we look back to 2022, there's a lot of auto theft, and the Golden Police Department engaging in the metro area auto theft task force that had a fancy name I don't remember. The fact that we had so much movement in the positive direction in the 3 years, which we saw by the reduction in auto thefts. Seeing those results is really interesting to see how putting forth more effort in an area can really change outcomes. The second one was on the transit. We didn't have the OR cart running in 2022, and now it's been in place and running and successfully, and so that access to more transit, those numbers trending up significantly, it was really great to see. The third observation is nothing to do with trends, and just the fact that we continue to have low numbers in affordable quality childcare and preschool. It is not an area we've talked a lot about in the city. We've talked about housing, we've talked about many other affordability, but childcare is getting a lot of air at the state level in some of the legislation that's being looked at and the governor's priorities, and I don't feel like I have a great sense of all of the childcare and preschool options that exist in Golden. So the fact that Colorado School of Mines opened a brand new center with a number of opportunities for childcare between 2022 and 2025, so a brand new facility, and our numbers still went down. I'd really like to this year understand a little bit more about, what we have, and is it, the availability, is it truly unaffordable? You know, our own city preschool program, what's the utilization there? So that was one where we're doing a lot on housing, we're doing a lot on these other things, but I'd love to at least get some baseline information about childcare.
We can do that.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Yes.
I just have just two quick thoughts. Are we saying older adults are people over 55?
Yes. In many ways, in different surveys, but.
Okay, thank you. And we talk so much about affordable housing, but this survey says affordable quality housing. I would love to explore what our residents think the quality would really be, because that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. As we move forward with a lot of our housing initiatives, I would like to know what they think quality would be.
And I'll, because I can, I'm just gonna speak, sorry. But you know, back in '22, housing was the lowest again. And I think the 12% is the lowest of all the numbers again this time. And I don't know what it was previously. But that quality of housing was certainly one of the factors of why we engaged in the NLC Healthy Housing initiative, because that's not new housing needed, it's the housing we have, you know, what's the quality of it and the livability of it. So I know that that part of the healthy housing piece is tied to the quality
tied to
question. Yeah.
Good.
Just to follow up on that, you know, it was interesting when you were going through the numbers that the 12% is pretty much in line with the Front Range. Is that what you said? Yeah. So we're not an outlier there.
And I was just peeking, it was 12% last time as well.
Okay. So this is not a golden
You're not
problem.
an outlier in the Front Range at all.
Yeah. Councilor King?
On the golden specific questions around events, I'm kind of remembering, I might have taken this survey, and when I take a survey and I don't know how to answer the question, I figure the questions could be better, or the answers options. So special events, did you attend a special event, Buffalo Bill Days, Goldens and Golden, Candlelight Walk, and then it says once per week or more, once per month, every few months. When the question is really specific to Golden, let's make the answers answerable too, because, you know, Goldens and Golden happens once a year. You can't go once a week. So same thing with the special events, farmers market, movies in the park, Super Cruise. Let's get the questions lined up, because that question, I basically discount it.
You gave that feedback, so you're not, I did hear that from you.
Okay.
The problem really had to do with space and trying to fit in the things that we were trying to fit in. So I think what our attempt was just to separate out a little bit of those different categories of events so that we could still get a sense of how many people were attending events, even if it was a little more difficult. But I understand your point. It is a little bit tricky to try to incorporate it.
Different questions have different answer options. It seems like we could have different answer options. You could keep the question. Anyway, apparently I've told you this before. So fix it.
So one
Yes.
comment. Again, the numbers around cost of living. The cost of living is really a big, broad subject. It would be nice in the next survey, I guess, if we could ask a little more detail on what aspect of cost of living, and maybe even what they think the city can do. Because, you know, grocery prices, is it taxes? I mean, I didn't see anything in there around those sorts of things. You know, what it would be nice to know what's in people's heads when they're thinking of that. Obviously, affordable housing
There are
is the
few
outlier.
items in the survey, but not as many as you could kind of dig into.
Any other questions, thoughts? I appreciated the custom questions this year. I think that was really helpful to get a sense of, particularly when we see something like small business support. You know, it's really interesting to then also have had the question of how often do you, what did it say? In the past 12 months, approximately how often, if at all, have you or other household members done each of the following in Golden's downtown area? So that's pretty specific for us to say, like, at least our downtown businesses. Obviously, there's small businesses all over the city, but you know, if they're not attending the events, if they're not, you know, visiting art downtown or something, that's really helpful information as we look at what we can do for small business support. So I think the custom questions were great.
Just something I was thinking about, laboring through this very intense packet. There was a lot of information tonight, y'all, and I'm new.
I looked at it as well.
It was a lot.
But thinking about the affordability and housing, and then looking at shifting demographics, and I know this is really the last topic because it was an addendum to that study, which I'd also never seen before, but then having the opportunity to switch from that topic to this topic, around that rating of the following aspects of quality in life, right? So higher than the custom benchmark, and higher or similar to the national benchmark, but Golden is a place to raise children compared with some of the future projections in the next 10 years that we were seeing in that study. Golden is a place to retire, same, right? And then sense of community, which to me implies folks who are able to get invested, stay invested. I think all of those things are really, really tying together. And so it was interesting to have both pieces of information to kind of bounce off of each other as part of preparing for tonight. So,
yeah, a lot of good information. And I refer to this often, you know, over the next 3 years when people say, you know, everybody thinks Golden's going, you know, everybody hates it and they're all leaving. It's like, well, you know, our most recent information is people really, you know, were happy and planning to stay. So having a valid survey that's benchmarked, that's statistically valid, and it's not just an online survey, is really valuable to have those kinds of conversations with community members who maybe individually have a different opinion, to be able to share kind of the community sense of what exists or what's going on. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
thank you.
Carly, are you going somewhere? Okay. Wait, aren't you up next? Our last item on the agenda is regarding our 2026 strategic action plan.
All right. Okay, so I'm gonna, because this is our first look at this year's plan, gonna kind of talk about all the aspects of our strategic plan, even though I know I'm up here a lot talking about this plan. But this plan has several aspects to it. So one of the top of the pyramid is the success factors. And so those are really what guide the vision and daily work. So those are the vision pieces, here they are, of action, connected and sustainable, affordable and thriving, safe, inclusive and engaged, respected and relational governance, and quality services. So those are the big picture vision categories that council looks at when looking at the projects that we do and the initiatives that we're looking at. And then the council initiatives are kind of the next piece down, and those are the high-level policy projects. So those are the ones where I'm up here on a quarterly basis, giving you all updates on what is going on with those projects, keeping really close tabs on kind of what the progress is on those, because they're really policy focused and of particular concern of council for that year. Then we have key projects, which are still really visible efforts from staff that we're working on throughout the year, but there's a lot of them. There's several, and so it is something that we update at the beginning of the year usually, and then towards the end of the year, and then throughout the year in items on the agenda. And we try to mention when there are key projects on the agenda as well, just to kind of help tie back. But those are the ones that really do take significant effort and are not just everyday work. And then of course our ongoing maintenance and work does require most of our time as staff in the city that we're doing to maintain services for the community and make sure that everything is operating as it should. So the council initiatives for the 2026 strategic plan are a few carryovers and ongoing ones, as well as a couple of new ones. So this is a full list of them, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about each one. So one of the new initiatives, what has been a key project for a long time and is talked about in the community a lot, and this has to do with Highway 93 North alternatives design. So this is really reviewing the Golden Plan and an opportunity to update it with new conceptual designs, really looking at the whole intersection and what's changed over the years and trying to figure out a way to make fundable projects that can be implemented to improve 93. So there's going to be a lot of public outreach on this. Like I said, this is something that the community has been talking about for many, many years. And so this has been a key project, but this year is really elevated to this level of council initiative because there's going to be a lot more discussion about it, a lot more work on what that design could look like and what the updates to the Golden Plan might be. The comprehensive plan has been going on for the past year or so and should be ending. We'll bring the comprehensive plan soon to you all to look at, but really have been being intentional about getting all the feedback on that plan and making sure that it's a guiding document for us. So that's something that council will be seeing soon. The federal policy impacts. This one really has to do with monitoring the federal government changes and policies and how they affect Golden. We've had a couple of big grants, the Lena Gulch project, where we're getting a lot of money from the federal government. So we just want to be really on top of monitoring what changes might affect our funding and how that affects Golden. And so because there's been a lot of changes in that realm, it's been something that's been elevated to just make sure that we're giving council a lot of updates on and keeping track of. Go ahead.
And I just want to make one quick comment with regards to that. Within the last week or so, we've seen examples of other communities within the Front Range that have received recent federal grants and recent federal grant agreements that have added in what likely for this council would be problematic language. And so we are anticipating, as we might see federal grant agreements coming forward, that we might encounter some of that language as well, which again is part of what we're going to be monitoring and trying to understand what the actual implications might be or when we might be faced with those sorts of discussions with council. So.
Next, we have Enhanced Community Engagement Program. So this will be another one coming to council soon to talk a little bit about what changes in our community engagement approach have looked like and different strategic options for council in that realm. Funding Housing for All has been talked about a lot today, but really has to do with affordable housing, the trust fund, and tracking funding opportunities and legislation, all of those pieces. The regional homelessness projects are our participation in a regional group to really look at ways to address homelessness related issues and make sure that we're looking for this long-term sheltering options that might exist within the county, as there are currently none. So that's been our biggest challenge that really we've been working through as a region. And then two here, this one's really, really important, and you heard it in the survey and you've heard it at study session today, but it's the Wildfire Management Resiliency Planning Strategy. So this again is something that the city has been working on for years, right? We've been having key projects that have to do with addressing wildfire management, looking at resiliency in different ways. This has been something that many different departments are looking at from different angles. And by elevating this to a council initiative this year is really putting emphasis on collaborating between these topics internally in city departments, and then also really tying together these big projects and looking at them through this lens of how can we manage wildfire, be more prepared, resiliency having to do with power outages and shutoffs and all of those kinds of things. So there are several projects listed under this initiative, and those are the plans that we discussed in study session. They're the sustainability projects and grants to look at those power shutoff resiliency, and the egress for communities, looking at evacuation routes. There are a lot of pieces to this because it really takes a lot of planning and infrastructure and development to tackle this issue, but it's really, really important, as we all know, and it's something that our community is really interested in and cares a lot about. And so this is going to be a big focus for this year and likely future years as well. We also have corridor projects, Heart of Golden. So Heart of Golden is a multi-year project that's really looking at the entire corridor of the Clear Creek. And you know, one of the big projects we've talked a lot about is the police and municipal building that we are working on, but there's a lot of pieces that go with that. One of them was discussed at the study session, the East Zone area and what that looks like. But there's also, you know, the City Hall site that we are currently on right now and the future of that, as well as planning for the Lions Park renewal and trail improvements for the creek, pedestrian connections, 8th to 10th Street. So there's a lot of projects under this. With this one and the wildfire resiliency strategy, we are trying to organize them a little bit better than in years past so we can track the different projects within these initiatives a little bit easier. So we've kind of made some adjustments with that. But this is another one of the really big efforts that the city undergoes with lots of different projects. In addition, there were several key projects added. This is a list of some of them. Some of them I've kind of mentioned that are related to initiatives, but they also have to do with other pieces, and also mentioned with this survey results, but just kind of a selection of some of those. And then the next steps of this process. So today is the adoption of the plan and talking through that. We have their Q1 update at the end of March, Q2 end of June, Q3 in September, and then in December we have kind of the end of year and fourth quarter. And then in January is when we re-talk about this all again and go through it again. So those dates might change, but we stay pretty close to those. But that's when we'll be updating council on these policy initiatives and having this conversation more times into the future. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions or listen to any feedback.
Thank you, Carly. Thanks for the full review. We have a lot of new counselors up here, and it's the first strategic planning process that they're going through. So great to have the next steps as well. Questions for Carly? Councilor Kim.
The 93 initiative, do you see coming up with anything that would influence the capital plan or grant applications to DRCOG in 2026, or is this more like 2027 and following?
So this year, I think we're really focused on the community input piece and designing a little bit further. So I think we need to do those two steps before we're really looking at some of those. But timing of that could still happen in this year because you do have to be forward looking for those things. So there could be a scenario where towards the end of this year, we have some of that information gathered and we're looking at grants and funding opportunities.
Thank you.
Yes.
Under the key projects added, automated vehicle identification system corridor. but photo radar. I get the photo radar. Given recent comments around flock cameras, things like that, automated vehicle identification system is going to send off some fireworks. What is that? What are you talking about there?
I think it is just the technical name of photo radar. Is that
Thank
the
you.
case?
So AVIS, the acronym is AVIS,
Yeah.
and that's what it's referred to in state statute.
Cool.
And so it's photo radar. It's not flock.
It'll,
Right.
It is
it'll
photo
just
radar.
save a lot of emails.
Yep, but
over
that's
the
what
next
it is.
few days.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
Carly, thank you. Who will be taking the lead in developing our comprehensive wildfire strategy? Will that be city manager's office?
So the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, the Golden Fire Department takes the lead on that. But we have a wildfire resiliency, wildfire mitigation committee, and that is made up of Parks and Rec, Public Works, Golden Fire Department, and then manager's office participates in that, not at every meeting necessarily, but we've got Claire, our management fellow, that's been sitting in and helping to coordinate some of those efforts as well. But that's who's responsible for the Wildfire Protection Plan, which is a big piece of the overall new council initiative. And that group will be taking the lead around most of the other elements that are associated with that council initiative as well.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a kickoff meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
So.
Another question?
Yes.
Following on that, one thing that's not mentioned in here, we are also going to include working with our county reps and Colorado School of Mines.
Yep.
Great.
Yep,
I just want
absolutely.
to make sure that's out there as well.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Councilor Kim?
Since you only put key projects added, but if somebody says, well, what are we doing around planning, phase 3.2 of planning changes or zoning changes, historic preservation, new carrots and sticks, those are in there, right? But they're just not new.
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
They're orange. Peach? No, I don't know what color that is.
I couldn't decide either. I was like,
So, Peach? We'll go with that.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. The only clarification I have, while the headline of the council initiative is federal policy impacts and adaptation, it does mention federal and state within the language of it. And so we know the state is going through budget problems, and they likely will impact cities in ways that, are not to our advantage. So it's federal and state policy impacts, even though the top line says federal. The language does include state.
Correct.
To recognize the reality we're in.
Do you want a motion?
I do want a motion.
I move adoption of Resolution 3278, Strategic Plan for 2026.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion, comments, thoughts before we take a vote?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I would like to thank everyone on council for their support of our new wildfire initiative. I really appreciate the support. We had a great conversation during our strategic planning process. Thank you.
And I really like the two items that bundle all of the things. This is the first time we've done this, and I think it tells a richer story of all the work that goes on related to a particular item, the wildfire, and then obviously Heart of Golden. In the past, where we just had like top line, it was hard to see all of the very specific efforts that are going on within the city, and sometimes in various different departments. So I think that's a really valued addition to our plan this year. All right, yes.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
one last. Having this be my first time going through it, very appreciative for all of the efforts around not just whatever was new and thrown out when we did our offsite and our planning for the strategic plan, but the ongoing vigilance and oversight for all of the other things that are going. So I appreciate the emphasis on both things, because humans get distracted easily. So to keep all of that and to, again, this was a significant packet for me personally, but it was worth it, well worth it to go through and read it multiple times to really get that understanding. And I'm grateful that as a new person coming in, that it was presented and packaged in a way that I could actually absorb and make sense of. So thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no other hands, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
Thank
we
you.
have ourselves a strategic action plan for the year. Thank you for all of the work. And the great thing about it is we get updates along the way, so we don't have to remember. There's no further business in front of council, so we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Perfect.